Hey, Bills Mafia. We know there's only one topic every day. All Bills, all the time. And now Matt Bove and Sal Capaccio are going really deep, talking Bills all year long, because it's always game day in Buffalo.
Well, we promised you we'd have a special treat this week. Our good buddy Mark Schlereth is going to join the podcast here. He's from the Stinkin Truth podcast, of course, former Denver Bronco, former Washington, then Redskin, offensive lineman, analyst in the National Football League. Welcome in and welcome back, buddy.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you guys for having me. It's always good to be with you.
Mark, we talked before last year's playoff game, and I remember, it was a great conversation, and the Broncos were at that point of their stage. The Bills were at the point of the stage they were at, and a lot has changed in a year. Why are the Broncos so much better 12 months later than they were last year?
It's a great question. Obviously, Bo Nix has more experience and all that kind of stuff. I still don't think I look at them, their ability to play their best when their best is required as an offense. That's been something that's been really interesting to watch that development. I think they have 12 comeback wins on the season, which is incredible. Part of the issue that you get into with the Broncos offensively is to have those comeback wins means you've got to have some really bad play throughout the course of the game. And so I love their mental toughness. I love their ability to come back. But that part scares me about this Broncos team. I think one of the things that happened at the end of last 5 or 6 weeks of the season last year, their defense was really leaking oil because their offense just could not sustain a lot of stuff. And I think their defense is a little bit fresher, a little bit more aggressive. And I think they've made some upgrades on that defense with another year, Hufanga being there, Dre Greenlaw coming in, that their defense is a little bit better than it was last year. And toward the end of last season, their defense, like I said, was leaking oil because they were so bad early. Their offense was so, just anemic early that defense kind of wore itself out throughout the course of the season. So you're hoping with this bye week that this defense is fresh, and we know that they're a damn good defense, no question about it.
Big picture a little bit here, Mark. I mean, I'm a bit of a football historian. I've been coming to this place. I'm at the Bills Stadium press box since 1987 to games, and I remember the Super Bowl years, and obviously Elway and Kelly. And it's been a hot minute, though, since these two teams were kind of good at the same time. Yes, they did meet up last year, but 2015, the last playoff home game in Denver, championship game, AFC championship game, they beat New England. What is the vibe like in Denver when this team is like this? I know it's a very loyal fan base like Buffalo. I think they're very similar in that regard.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's really interesting. There's it's cautiously optimistic here. And I think this fan base really knows how good this defense is, but this fan base is also a little bit nervous about the lack of consistency of this offense. And I'll be frank with you, the last couple of weeks, man, they haven't been that good. And, the Broncos approached the Week 18 matchup against the Chargers, and they were like, hey, man, we're going to play this like a playoff game. And they ended up settling for field goals. The only touchdown they had came from a defensive touchdown. And, and the Chargers approached it like a preseason game. We're not playing anybody. And, you end up winning the game 19-3 or whatever it was. But I really looked at that and I was like, man, this was not great. I mean, they had a linebacker, number 58. I don't remember what his name was, but that played for the Chargers that had never played one defensive snap. And we literally tried to send him to the Pro Bowl. Like, we were like, hey, we're going to make this guy an alternate for the Pro Bowl. Watch him make every tackle. I don't know that we blocked him yet. And so those are concerns. Those are legitimate concerns. And, a lot of people have given me grief because I said, hey, man, if it came down between the Chargers and the Bills, I'd rather the Broncos face the Bills. And people are like, oh, you're crazy, Josh Allen, and how good Josh Allen is. And he's way better, than Justin Herbert. And you're high and and my point was not about the quarterbacks. You're right. I think Josh Allen's one of the best in the league, and I think he's one of the best that I've seen play, and the guy is a problem. There's no question. My point was the Broncos have not matched up well with the Chargers defense. The Chargers defense is legitimate,
Mhm.
and we have just not historically over the last couple of seasons blocked them very well. And they've attacked our protections and they have gotten to our quarterback and they've done a lot of things defensively that we just not haven't responded. We always say that fights, what is it? Matchups make fights or whatever that saying is. I don't remember that cliche, but that cliche saying, but like we just haven't matched up well personnel wise or scheme wise with the Chargers. And that's where I was like, I'd rather play the Bills than the Chargers because I know how that defense has affected the Broncos. But it should be a really interesting matchup. And I look at those weaknesses of the Bills defense and their inability to stop the run and where they sit on that and understand that like I look at that and go, you got to attack that. But the Broncos have not really run the
Right.
ball exceptionally
Mhm.
well either. So like this is just a really interesting matchup for me.
This is an incredibly simple question, but I have no idea what you're going to say, which almost maybe tells me the answer, at least in my head, my preconceived answer. Is Bo Nix good?
Yeah, yeah. You know what? I think there's been a lot of inconsistencies there. Um, I think he's really good. I think he's a really good quarterback. I think the issue that you get into um, with Bo is he's inconsistent. And you know what's crazy? Where he gets inconsistent, I think, is he gets sped up. His
Yeah.
mechanics get sped up, his feet get sped up. And this is almost counterintuitive, but when they play a tempo game, he plays a lot better. It's almost like the tempo of the offense slows him down because the tempo picks up but he slows down in the tempo. When it's a huddle up offense, when it's motions and shifts and do all that stuff, it feels like he is just chomping at the bit all the time. And
Yeah.
that's where he mechanically gets sped up. So when he's in those tempo situations, this is why they have so many fourth quarter comebacks.
Yeah.
They get out of the motions and the set formations and all the different personnel groupings and they line up and they say, let's be static, let's go tempo, let's pick it up. And then when he's in that situation, that's when he slows down. And it's a fascinating dichotomy, if you will, or juxtaposition of when he is in a regular huddle up offense, it's where he probably plays his worst football. And when he's in a tempo, we got to have it,
Yeah.
situation. It's one of these things, and that people always talk about when it's nut cutting time. Like Bo Nix, when it's nut cutting time, that guy cuts nuts. He just knows like how to play in those situations where he plays his best. But you can't be in tempo the entirety of four quarters. You can't. And so it's that balance of being able to, balance yourself out and play well in those huddle up situations when you're changing personnel groupings and formations and you're using the motions and all the things that Sean Payton likes to do.
A lot of what you said early on there reminds us of what Josh Allen was the
Gosh,
first few
yeah.
years in the league, right? I mean, no doubt about it. He was
Yeah.
way better out of structure than in structure, right? And a lot of it, Josh is still great out of structure, but he's learned how to play the quarterback position from the pocket. He's learned how to keep things a lot more calm back there and take what the defense gives him. So Josh Allen, of course, as you know, played at Wyoming. There's gonna be a lot of people from Wyoming probably going to the game. Interesting fact: Wyoming actually plays at its games 2,000 feet higher than Mile High. He has a little
Yeah.
experience there. But a question we get all week that I can't answer, Mark. I never lived in Denver. I never played in Denver. How tough really is it? How much of an adjustment is it for an opponent? I know everybody wants to, on the Denver side, say it's just like Buffalo, weather, snow. You want to use it as your advantage, but Bills players like Josh are like, yeah, you don't talk about it. You get through it for 3 hours. There's oxygen on the sidelines. Just go play. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean it's what you have. It's just one of those things. I never played here as a visitor. I only played here as
Right.
a home player. So I played Denver several times, but it was always in Washington when I played in Washington. So I've never played here as a visitor, but just talking to people, they'll talk about the altitude being real. And, if you ever been there to Denver, as soon as you walk out of the locker room, they talk to you about, like, there's signs about stay hydrated. Dehydration's a real issue at altitude. And, you're at 5280. There's all kinds of signs as you walk out of the locker room into to get to the facility or get into the stadium, that everybody, the Broncos try to warn you about, to try to get in your head a little bit. But you talk to anybody who's played here, they'll tell you, man, it gasses you. There's no question about it, and that's a tough part of playing this thing. I think one of the big things for me with the Broncos defense, and I'll be interested to get your guys' opinion on this, because out of structure, Josh Allen's incredible. I mean, he's incredible in structure, out of structure. He's a freak show, man. The guy is a great player. The one thing I always talk about is having an identity and knowing what your identity is, and adhering and staying true to that identity. Vance Joseph, the defensive coordinator for the Broncos, does a tremendous job of bringing pressure, simulated pressure, going after people, playing man to man. Your guys' receiving core is banged up. They're down. They play a lot of man to man here in Denver, and I understand that opens up things for the quarterback and all that stuff. But my big thing here on the radio, here locally, and on the podcast has been, dude, be who you are. And that means don't be this cage rush football team. We got to control the quarterback. Don't let him out of the pocket. Make sure we keep lanes. Like, he'll kill you in that. So my thought process is, hey, man, come after him. Understand we're going to give up some big plays. He's going to make some plays because that's who he is. But you hope that you can get him for one of them 25-yard sacks that, sometimes he'll take.
Right.
Maybe you create a turnover down in the red zone, whatever the case may be. Maybe you hit him enough, kind of like going back to that 2015 Broncos championship run where they beat the New England Patriots here. I think they hit Tom Brady in the pocket 23 times in that game. They beat the living snot out of him. And it still came down to a missed 2-point conversion for the Broncos to win that game. But that to me is the hope that the Broncos adhere to, because the last couple of weeks they've talked about cage rushing quarterbacks. They've talked about doing that. And I just think that it's not who they are. And I think that's what they have to do to win this football game. And I hope they do it.
Well, the point that you brought up is kind of like the perfect segue to the next question I was going to ask you. And my question was going to be about how do you attack this Broncos defense? Now, last year, it feels at least relatively similar that if they're going to play a lot of man, hey, Josh is going to probably run, and the Bills were going to try and win some mismatches with the linebackers, especially with the running backs. Like, that was a very big part of their game plan going into the game. Now, it doesn't look like they're going to have Ty Johnson, their third down running back, which is a notable loss for the Bills. And when you consider all the wide receiver injuries, that's like a double loss for the Bills. Right. What is it? Like, is this a lean into the tight ends game because that's where the Bills are still the most reputable? Or is it hey, if you're going to play man, like Josh, let's see how the foot is. Just go run. Like, go do your thing.
Yeah, I think there's probably a combination of all those things. I think the tight end position historically for Denver has been something that has hurt them. Now they've done a better job this year. And part of that is Dre Greenlaw when he's healthy, Singleton. They've got some linebackers that can run. But a lot of it is just how Vance Joseph has attacked protections, and he's gotten to quarterbacks before they can legitimately get the ball out. And so that's going to be a big part of this game plan. Obviously the Buffalo Bills are one of the best run teams in football, and and they've got the leading rusher in the National Football League, and that's going to be a part of that as well. But again, part of my belief is you're going to have to just deal with the fact that you're going to give up some big plays, and Josh is going to make some big plays, both in the passing game and in the running game. But you hope you win that battle of attrition. One of the things I've always said about football in general is I've had this rule that I made up years ago about the 70-30 rule, which means 70% of the time you got to be on schedule. 30% of the time when things break down, you got to make plays. And they have the ability to do that in Buffalo, obviously, because their quarterback is that good. But my belief in when you play off schedule or out of structure is you can survive that way. But if you play too much out of structure, what ends up happening is oftentimes you make more mistakes than you make big plays. And when you start getting to that 50-50 role, then tip ball, interception, return, sack, 25-yard or 20-yard sack because you scramble out. Like, those are the things that will cost you. And so, that to me is, if you can get a quarterback with your blitz and with your scheme and attacking protection, if you can get that guy to be off that 70-30 schedule and to be more 60-40 or 50-50, then you've got a chance to at the end of the day, you may give up 4 big plays, but you've created 6 big plays for your defense, going the opposite way. And like, if you can do that, I feel like you give yourself a puncher's chance. Listen, man, this is not going to be a walk in the park. And I understand where people say, hey, man, this might be the worst number 1 seed. And I can't necessarily argue that. I do know the crowd noise is legit. I do know this defense can rush the passer. I do know that Vance Joseph does an unbelievable job of attacking quarterbacks. I do know they can win on the outside in one-on-one coverage because they've proven that over the course of the season. But obviously I have nothing but respect for Josh Allen, and I'm very concerned about the Broncos being able to put enough offensive, run game and offensive, put up enough points and not get stalled down in the red zone like they have. Because you look at the last 4 weeks, man, they have just done nothing but kick field goals, and you're not going to beat the Buffalo Bills kicking field goals in the red zone.
And Sean McDermott's been very good historically against younger quarterbacks and experienced quarterbacks, changing the picture. They did it against Trevor Lawrence last week, and Liam Cohen had a lot of, praise for him. I'm sure they'll do some of that this week as well. Mark, before we let you go, by the way, I agree with you about the Broncos. Like, I would not do that either. Cage rush. This is how the Texans beat the Bills. They just said, we're coming after you. And they sacked Josh a lot. And that's when Josh took a couple tough plays, and he should have lived to fight another day, but he tried to make a couple plays that he couldn't, and they beat him up pretty badly that game. So I agree with you 100%. Before we let you go, big picture, you've been around this league a long time. I want to get your take on Harbaugh, Tomlin, the changing landscape of the AFC now with the Chiefs and them not making it, kind of just where everything lies a little bit. Big shift here in the NFL and in this conference specifically.
Yeah, no question about it. It's just it's really interesting. Obviously, the Tomlin thing, I don't think it shocks anybody, but it is one of those situations where you're playing, and you're coaching one of the crown jewels in the NFL, and your job is every year you come in and say, hey, man, we got to win the division, get the number 1 seed. That's what we do. That's Pittsburgh Steelers football, and it's not good enough to, skate into the playoffs with a 9-8 record and lose 7 in a row. You haven't won a playoff game since 2017. It's just not the standard. And so I understand the mutual parting of ways. Same thing with John Harbaugh. I think just at times, even though you're a great coach, sometimes kind of almost, if you look at the Pete Carroll, Seattle Seahawks kind of decision, Pete was there for a long time. Pete put up playoff teams. Pete went to Super Bowls and he won a Super Bowl. But there comes a time when, hey, man, we want some fresh blood. We want us to change the direction. We want some new eyes on this thing and maybe some new messages. And I think over time, John Madden used to say you last about 10 years before players start tuning you out. Now, there's so much more turnover in today's game than there was back then. But I think there is something to that. Change of scenery can do you well. Both these franchises are in good shape. Probably Baltimore better than Pittsburgh because they have a quarterback. But the bottom line is neither of the moves surprise me. It's just going to be weird seeing somebody else on those sidelines for Pittsburgh and for Baltimore.
No doubt.
Mark, thank you so much for doing this today. We very much appreciate it, and we look forward to our chat before the Bills and Broncos play next year in the playoffs as well, because it seems like we're headed in that direction.
And maybe seeing you on Saturday. Are you going to be at the game on Saturday? You'll be there?
I will be at the game on Saturday as a Broncos ambassador.
I love it.
I will be cheering hard for my Broncos.
I know you will.
But listen, man, I just, like I said, as much as I like to flip people grief and fan bases grief, I have nothing but the utmost respect for what Buffalo's been able to accomplish the last several years, and it'll be really interesting. This is going to be a great game, I think.
No doubt. Matt and I will be
Thanks,
there.
Mark.
We'll see you down on the field. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks. Take care.